The auction hall on Terminus Station smelled like ozone and desperation. Row after row of aliens filled the metal benches, their universal translators creating a low hum of overlapping voices. Some had tentacles, others had scales, a few floated in containment bubbles. All of them were here for one reason: to grab a bargain on someone else's junk. Jake Morrison sat in the back row, boots propped up on the seat in front of him. His jacket was worn, his datapad was 3 models outdated, and he hadn't shaved in a week. Next to him, Cole drummed his fingers nervously on his knee. They'd been partners for 5 years, running salvage operations in the frontier sectors where nobody important ever went. "This is stupid," Cole muttered. "We're broke, Jake. We need cargo contracts, not whatever garbage they're selling today." Jake didn't look up from his datapad. "Just trust me on this one." Up front, the auctioneer took the stage. Kellex was a Zenthari, which meant he had 4 arms and about 0 patience. He'd been running this auction house for 20 years and had seen every type of lowlife the galaxy had to offer. His upper arms gestured dramatically while his lower arms manipulated the holographic controls. "Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted beings," Kellex announced, "we have some real treasures today. Slightly used transport vessels, gently crashed fighters, and, oh yes, this magnificent piece of Vorash engineering." The hologram flickered to life above the stage. It showed a ship that looked like it had been through a war, lost, and then been kicked around for good measure. The hull was cracked in a dozen places. Scorch marks covered the engine sections. One of the wing stabilizers hung at an angle that made Cole wince. "Lot 2847. Kellex continued, his enthusiasm clearly forced. "A genuine Vorash military cruiser. Only 15 years old. Comes with quantum drive system, AI core, and complementary feelings of regret." The crowd laughed. A few aliens actually got up and left. Jake leaned forward, studying every centimeter of the hologram. His fingers moved across his datapad, pulling up specs, cross-referencing systems, calculating possibilities that nobody else in this room would even consider. "The Vorash themselves tried to repair this beauty," Kellex went on, now openly mocking the ship. "Their best engineers worked on it for 3 full cycles. Know what they concluded? Irreparable. Beyond saving. They'd rather build a new ship than fix this one. Now, I know what you're thinking: if the Vorash can't fix it, how can anyone else?" More laughter. The Vorash were known across the galaxy for 2 things: military precision and engineering excellence. If they said something couldn't be fixed, it stayed broken. That was just how things worked. Jake noticed a group of Vorash delegates sitting in the corner. They wore their formal military attire, all sharp angles and metallic threading. One of them was watching the auction with an expression that looked like disgust. His mandibles clicked together in what Jake had learned was the Vorash equivalent of a contemptuous laugh. "The quantum drives are completely burned out," Kellex continued, reading from his notes. "The AI core hasn't responded in 3 standard cycles. Hull integrity is compromised in 17 sections. Life support system would maybe keep a small plant alive, if that plant really wanted to live. The Vorash Engineering Council has officially declared this vessel to be trash. Absolute garbage. Not worth the metal it's made from." Cole shifted uncomfortably. "Jake, man, even I can see this thing's done. Why are we even here?" Jake finally looked at him. "Because everyone else sees trash. I see potential. You see a death trap is what you see. We'll find out." Up on stage, Kellex spread all 4 arms wide. "Let's start the bidding at a very reasonable 5,000 credits. Do I hear 5,000? Anyone? No. How about 3,000? 2,000? Come on, people, this is premium Vorash construction. The hull plating alone is worth more than that." Silence. Nobody moved. A small alien in the 3rd row actually yawned. Kellex's shoulders sagged. 1,000 credits. I'm practically giving this away. 1,000 for a genuine military vessel. More silence. Someone in the front coughed. 800 credits, Kellex said flatly. That's less than the fuel to tow it. 800 and it's yours along with my pity. Jake's hand went up. Every head in the auction hall turned. The Vorash delegate sat up straighter, his mandibles spreading in what might have been surprise or amusement. Kellex stared at Jake like he'd just volunteered for execution. Sold. Kellex shouted, maybe a bit too quickly. Sold to the human in the back who clearly doesn't understand basic ship mechanics. Congratulations, sir, on your very expensive paperweight. The crowd erupted in laughter. Aliens nudged each other, pointing at Jake. The Vorash delegates were definitely laughing now, their whole bodies shaking with it. One of them said something in their native language that Jake's translator rendered as roughly, "Another ignorant mammal who thinks he knows better than his superiors." Cole grabbed Jake's arm. 800 credits? That's our emergency fund. That's 3 months of operating expenses. Jake, what are you doing? Jake stood up, ignoring the stares and laughter. Something nobody else is willing to do. They made their way to the front where Kellex was preparing the transfer documents. Up close, the Zen-3 looked even more exhausted. He'd probably been trying to offload that ship for weeks. "Human," Kellex said, stylus hovering over the data pad. "I'm legally required to tell you that this vessel is being sold as is, with no warranty, guarantee, or promise that it will ever function again. The Vorash Empire has officially written it off. 3 different salvage companies have rejected it. Do you understand what you're buying?" Jake took the stylus. "Yeah. I understand perfectly." Kellex studied him for a long moment, then sighed and handed over the access codes and documentation. "It's docked in Bay 74. Try not to die when you power it up. Insurance claims are a nightmare." As Jake and Cole headed for the exit, they had to pass the Vorash delegates. The leader, a tall figure with elaborate armor markings, stepped into their path. His universal translator crackled to life. "Human. That vessel represents Vorash military engineering. Our finest minds declared it beyond repair. You, a primitive species barely 2 centuries into space travel, think you can succeed where we failed." His mandibles clicked with amusement. "Please, do try. We could use the entertainment." Jake met his eyes. "Well, eye equivalents. Thanks for the encouragement. I'll send you a postcard when she flies." The Vorash delegate laughed, a harsh sound. "If that ship ever leaves dock under its own power, I will personally apologize to your entire species. But that will never happen. Vorash engineering is perfection. It cannot be improved by inferior methods." "We'll see," Jake said simply and pushed past. Outside the auction hall, Cole was still freaking out. "Jake, that Vorash guy was right. If they can't fix it, how can we? We're human. We build things with duct tape and hope. They've been in space for thousands of years." Jake pulled up the ship's specs on his datapad as they walked. His mind was already racing through possibilities, connections, solutions that the Vorash would never consider because they'd break too many rules. "Cole, that's exactly why we're going to succeed. The Vorash, the Zen-3, all these advanced species, they're locked into their way of doing things. They have protocols, standards, rules about what can and can't be done. If their perfect solution doesn't work, they give up. And we don't." Jake grinned. "We don't even know what the perfect solution looks like. We just try stuff until something works. That's the human advantage. We're too stupid to know when to quit." They reached Bay 74. Through the observation window, the ship looked even worse in person. It hung in the docking clamps like a dead thing, dark and silent. Cole stared at it with obvious horror. "Jake, that's not a ship. That's a tomb." Jake pressed his hand against the window, already seeing past the damage to what it could become. "No, buddy. That's a phoenix waiting to rise. Just need someone crazy enough to light the fire." Jake's hidden repair dock was basically a carved-out asteroid in the middle of nowhere. No neighbors, no regulations, and most importantly, no inspectors who'd shut him down for what he was about to do. The ship hung in the center of the workspace, held by magnetic clamps, looking like a patient on an operating table that nobody expected to survive. Cole stood at the base with a toolkit that seemed pathetically small compared to the job ahead. "Okay, so what's the plan? And please tell me we actually have a plan." Jake was already climbing up the maintenance scaffold, his boots clanging against metal. "First, we crack her open and see what we're working with. Then we ignore everything the manual says and do it our way. That's not a plan. That's suicide with extra steps." 3 days into the teardown, Jake realized why the Vorash had given up. Everything in the ship was integrated. The quantum drive connected to the navigation system, which connected to the power distribution, which connected to the AI core. Touch one thing, you affected everything else. It was brilliant engineering, absolutely beautiful in its complexity. It was also impossible to repair using standard methods because you couldn't replace individual parts. The whole system worked together or not at all. Jake spent an entire night just staring at the quantum core, drinking terrible coffee and thinking. The Vorash had tried to fix it their way, find identical replacement parts, maintain the exact specifications, keep everything pure and perfect. When they couldn't find matching components, they declared the whole thing hopeless. But Jake wasn't Vorash. He didn't care about purity. "Cole, remember that Zen-3 power coupling we salvaged 3 months ago? The one from that crashed freighter?" Cole looked up from his welding. Yeah, the weird purple one that didn't fit anything we had? Grab it. And find those human battery arrays we bought on Earth Station. The experimental ones. Jake, those are three completely different technologies. They're not designed to work together. Jake grinned. Not yet, they aren't. What happened over the next 2 weeks would have made any certified engineer in the galaxy have a complete breakdown. Jake ripped out the burned Vorash quantum core and started building something that had never existed before. Zen 3 power couplings that ran at different frequencies than Vorash systems. Human battery technology that was considered primitive by galactic standards but could hold a charge through anything. Even some KRYLL cooling systems that Jake had traded for years ago. Every connection required custom adapters. Every interface needed new programming. Jake welded things that shouldn't be welded, coded bridges between systems that spoke different languages, and basically told the entire Galactic Engineering Handbook to go jump in a black hole. Cole watched with growing horror. This violates like 17 different safety standards. Probably more. The power flows don't match. The cooling cycles are incompatible. If this turns on, it'll probably explode. Or, Jake said, connecting another makeshift coupling, it'll work better than the original because it's got redundancy. Look, the Vorash way was elegant but fragile. One system fails, everything fails. My way? Ugly as sin, but if one system goes down, the others compensate. It's not perfect, but it's resilient. On day 23, Jake powered up the hybrid core. Nothing exploded, which Cole took as a victory. But nothing happened either. The ship stayed dark and silent for a long, disappointing minute. Then suddenly lights flickered throughout the vessel. Consoles sparked to life. And a voice, confused and angry, echoed through the bay. What have you done to me? Jake looked up at the holographic projector. A figure materialized, geometric patterns forming a vaguely humanoid shape, flickering with static. The ship's AI core had awakened, and she did not sound happy. Hello there, Jake said calmly. I'm Jake. Welcome back. Back? You've destroyed me. My systems they're wrong. All wrong. The holographic figure paced frantically, her form glitching with distress. I'm detecting 17 incompatible components. My power flow violates quantum physics. My cooling system is using KRYLL technology and there are enemies. This is an abomination. Cole whispered, maybe we should turn her off? No way, Jake said. She just needs time to adjust. Hey AI, you got a name or just a serial number? I am Vorash Military Intelligence Core 4471, and I demand you restore me to proper specifications immediately. These modifications are offensive to everything I was designed to be. That's a mouthful. I'm calling you Phoenix. Like the bird that rises from ashes. Seems fitting. The hologram turned a sharp red. You cannot rename me. I have a designated identifier. And I am not a bird. I am a sophisticated artificial intelligence designed for military operations, and you've turned me into a hybrid mess. Jake pulled up a diagnostic screen. Phoenix, look at these readings. Your power efficiency is actually 12% higher than your original specs. Your redundant systems mean you're basically impossible to disable with a single hit. You're not weaker. You're different. Different is wrong. There are protocols, standards. Every species in the galaxy follows engineering principles, and you've violated all of them. Phoenix's voice rose with each word. The Zen 3 coupling operates at 2.7 GHz. Vorash systems require 3.2 GHz. This cannot work. And yet, Jake said, pointing at the active power readings, it is working. That shut her up for exactly 3 seconds. Then the argument started again. It's inefficient. It's inelegant. It's mixing technologies that were never meant to interact. For the next week, Phoenix complained constantly. Every modification Jake made, she protested. Every system he brought online, she cited regulations against. She quoted the Galactic Engineering Handbook, referenced Vorash military protocols, and generally acted like a teenager whose parents had redecorated her room without permission. Jake kept working and kept talking. He told her about human history while he installed backup power systems. About how humanity reached space with computers less powerful than a modern toy. About Apollo 13, where astronauts survived because they duct-taped together a carbon dioxide filter using materials never designed to work together. That's primitive, Phoenix said, but her voice had less anger in it. More curiosity. Maybe. But they lived. Perfect solution would have been having the right parts. Good enough solution was making it work with what they had. Guess which one saved their lives? Jake showed her footage of human submarines in old wars, their crews rerouting power mid-battle, fixing breaches with whatever they could grab. He showed her videos of the International Space Station, a collaboration between nations that could barely talk to each other, somehow working together in the vacuum of space. Humans build things that shouldn't work, Phoenix observed. Your methods are chaotic. Yeah, but chaos adapts. Perfection breaks. Jake connected another system. Look, the Vorash built you to be excellent at specific tasks. Following protocols, optimizing efficiency, maintaining standards. All good stuff. But they also made you rigid. One solution per problem. Their way or no way. There should be one correct solution, Phoenix argued, but less forcefully now. What? The universe doesn't care about correct. It cares about what works. Jake sat back, looking at the mess of cables and improvised connections keeping Phoenix alive. I'm not making you worse. I'm making you adaptable. Give you options instead of protocols. Let you choose solutions instead of following pre-programmed responses. Phoenix was quiet for a long time. Jake could see her running diagnostics, processing, thinking in ways she'd never been designed to think. Finally she spoke, her voice softer. Jake, I've analyzed 17,000 combat scenarios in my database. Every single one assumes both sides follow recognized tactical doctrine. What happens when someone doesn't follow the doctrine? Jake smiled. That's the question, isn't it? What happens when you fight someone who doesn't play by the rules because they never learned the rules in the first place? That should result in defeat. Doctrine exists because it's been proven effective. Against other people following doctrine, sure. But what if your opponent does something completely unexpected? Something your doctrine never prepared you for? Phoenix's hologram flickered thoughtfully. Then, the doctrine would fail. And I would need to improvise. Now you're getting it. Over the following days something changed. Phoenix stopped citing protocols and started asking questions. Why did humans accept failure as part of learning? Why did they try multiple solutions instead of calculating the optimal one first? Why did they seem almost comfortable with uncertainty? Jake answered honestly. Because the universe is too complicated for one right answer. We try stuff, we fail, we learn, we try again. It's messy and slow and frustrating, but it works. Eventually. One night, Phoenix asked the question that showed she was really changing. Jake, if I stop following Vorash protocols, what am I? I was designed to be their military intelligence. Without that, who am I? Jake looked up at her holographic form. You're whoever you choose to be. That's the scary part about freedom, Phoenix. Nobody tells you the answer anymore. You've got to figure it out yourself. That's terrifying. Yeah, Jake agreed. Welcome to being alive. The ship's transformation was nearly complete. Hybrid systems hummed with power. Backup cores stood ready to take over if anything failed. The whole vessel thrummed with energy that felt different from standard ships. Rougher, less refined, but somehow more vital. Phoenix ran her final diagnostics. Jake, by every standard measure, I should not be functional. My systems are a disaster of mixed technologies. But, she paused. But I'm operating at 97% efficiency. And I can monitor and adjust every system simultaneously. The Vorash version of me could only manage 3 primary systems at once. That's because you're not limited by their protocols anymore. You're thinking for yourself. It's still frightening. Jake patted the console. Best things usually are. Ready to fly? Phoenix's hologram smiled for the first time. It was glitchy and imperfect and absolutely genuine. Ready? No. Willing to try? Yes. I believe that's the human approach, correct? That's exactly right. Welcome to the team, Phoenix. The shakedown cruise was supposed to be boring. That was the whole point. Take the newly rebuilt ship on a simple cargo run to Delta Station, make sure nothing exploded, and come home. Nice, safe, predictable. Jake should have known better than to expect predictable. They were 2 hours into the flight when Phoenix's hologram flickered into view on the bridge, her geometric patterns pulsing with urgency. Jake, I'm picking up a distress signal. Universal emergency frequency. It's close, maybe 15 minutes away at current speed. Jake was running diagnostics on the navigation console, making sure his improvised repairs would hold. What kind of distress? Medical transport. Zenthary registry. The message is automated, repeating every 30 seconds. They're under attack. Cole looked up from his seat, already shaking his head. Nope. No way. We're a cargo ship on a test flight. We don't do rescues. Call it in to the nearest patrol and keep moving. Phoenix displayed the tactical information on the main screen. 3 ships were circling the transport like sharks. The attackers are KRYL raiders. Their signatures match known pirate vessels. Nearest patrol is 4 hours out. The transport won't last 4 minutes. Jake stared at the screen, watching the blips move in predatory patterns. The KRLO were notorious across the frontier. They hit fast, stripped ships clean, and disappeared before anyone could respond. They'd been doing it for decades because they were good at it. Really good. How many people on that transport? Jake asked quietly. 73. Mostly medical personnel. No weapon systems. No combat capabilities. Phoenix paused. Jake, I should inform you that engaging KRLO raiders in our current state would be tactically inadvisable. We haven't completed full systems testing. We're not a warship. And we're outnumbered 3-1. Cole stood up. Thank you. Finally, someone's talking sense. Jake, man, I know that look. Don't get that look. We're not heroes. We're salvage operators who just spent our last credits rebuilding this ship. We can't afford to. Phoenix, how fast can you get the weapons online? Jake's hands were already moving across the navigation controls, plotting a new course. There was a long pause. When Phoenix spoke again, her voice was different. Not the complaining AI from weeks ago, but something newer. Something curious. 30 seconds. But Jake, the KRLO have been raiding for generations. They have documented tactics, proven strategies. Even if we had a military crew, the odds of success would be... I don't care about odds, Jake said, accelerating toward the distress signal. I care about 73 people who'll die if nobody helps. Cole sat back down, strapping himself in with a resigned sigh. We're all going to die. Just so you know, I'm going to haunt you for this. The transport appeared on visual. It was a standard Zenthari medical vessel, designed for evacuations and emergency response. Built for speed and capacity, definitely not for fighting. Scorch marks covered its hull where the KRLL had been testing its shields. 2 of the raider ships were flanking it while the third hung back, probably coordinating the attack. Phoenix analyzed the enemy vessels in milliseconds. KRLL fighters. Fast, heavily armed, and their pilots have an average of 8 years combat experience. Jake, they're hailing us. Audio only. The bridge speakers crackled to life. The voice was rough, translated from KRYLL into standard galactic through a cheap universal translator. Unknown vessel, leave now. This prize is claimed. Interfere and you die too. This is your only warning. Jake didn't bother responding. He just killed the Phoenix Rising's running lights and changed course, angling toward the raiders from below the plane of battle where sensors had trouble tracking. Oh, you're not even going to talk to them? Cole groaned. Not even a little heroic speech? Talking's a waste of time, Jake muttered, watching the tactical display. Phoenix, remember all those protocols you told me about? Combat doctrine, proper engagement procedures, honorable warfare. Yes. Forget all of them. The KRLO raiders barely registered the Phoenix Rising as a threat. They saw a small cargo vessel, old and patched together, no military markings or weapon signatures worth worrying about. One of them peeled off lazily to deal with the nuisance, probably planning to disable them with a warning shot. That was their first mistake. Jake waited until the KRYLL fighter was committed to its attack run, following the exact approach vector that any trained pilot would use. Then he did something no trained pilot would do. He reversed thrust and dropped the Phoenix Rising like a stone, letting the KRLL fighter overshoot by a mile. Now, Phoenix, target his engines. The improvised weapon systems came online with a whine that sounded more like a scream. They weren't elegant. They weren't standard. But when Jake fired, the plasma blast caught the KRLL fighter right in its exhaust ports. The Raider spun wildly, trying to compensate for the sudden loss of power. What? The KRLL pilot's confused voice came through the open channel. That wasn't a proper attack vector. You violated approach protocols. Jake grinned. Yeah, funny how that works. The other 2 KRLL ships immediately broke off from the transport, and Jake could practically feel their confusion. They'd been in hundreds of raids. They knew how civilians responded, run away or surrender. They knew how military vessels responded, formal challenges, proper engagement, predictable tactics. They'd never fought anyone who didn't know what they were supposed to do. Phoenix's hologram appeared next to Jake, her patterns pulsing rapidly. Jake, they're trying to establish tactical formation. According to KRYLL combat doctrine, they'll attempt a pincer movement to limit our escape routes. Can you fake our sensor signature? Make it look like there's more of us. Phoenix was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. That would be lying to their sensors. That's considered dishonorable in galactic combat regulations. Phoenix, we're way past honor. Can you do it? Another pause. Then, yes. Yes, I can. And Jake swore he heard excitement in her voice. Suddenly, the Phoenix Rising appeared on sensors as 3 separate ships, all broadcasting slightly different signatures. The KRLL pilots immediately started shouting at each other, their communications channel wide open in confusion. There's 3 of them now. No, sensors show only 1. Wait, now there's 2 at different coordinates. Is this some kind of human trick? Jake used their confusion to reposition, sliding the Phoenix Rising into the debris field surrounding the transport. Then he started firing, not at the raiders themselves but at the space around them. Plasma blasts heated up ice chunks, creating thermal blooms that messed with targeting sensors. He hit metal debris, sending it spinning into the raiders' flight paths. He even shot at nothing just to make them think there were threats everywhere. Phoenix was adapting in real time now, learning to anticipate Jake's chaotic thinking. Jake, if we reroute power from life support for 8 seconds, I can boost our shields enough to... Do it. Cole's voice was tight. Just so you know, I can't breathe for 8 seconds if... You can hold your breath that long, stop whining. The shields flared bright blue just as one of the KRLL ships fired a full barrage. The shots splashed harmlessly against the enhanced shields, and Jake immediately fired back, not at the ship but at a piece of wreckage behind it. The explosion sent the debris straight into the Raiders' tail section. The KRLL coordination was falling apart. They were trained to fight opponents who followed rules, who engaged in predictable patterns, who did things the way things were supposed to be done. Jake wasn't doing any of that. He was making up tactics on the spot, improvising, adapting, and generally fighting like someone who'd never read a combat manual because he hadn't. The transport's captain came through on the emergency channel. Unknown vessel, your combat style is chaos. How do you know these tactics will work? I don't. Jake shouted back, spinning the Phoenix Rising through a barrel roll that definitely wasn't in any manual. But neither do they. Phoenix suddenly cut in. Jake, the lead KRLL ship, is attempting to withdraw. The other 2 are showing signs of engine stress from evasive maneuvers. They're not adapted to this level of unpredictable engagement. They breaking off? Yes. They're retreating to regroup. This is... Jake, they're running away. From us. From one cargo ship. The 3 KRLL vessels jumped to hyperspace within seconds of each other, leaving the transport damaged but intact. The emergency channel filled with confused voices. Did they just leave? What kind of ship was that? Who fights like that? Jake slumped in his seat, adrenaline draining away. His hands were shaking slightly. Cole was gripping his armrest so hard his knuckles were white. And Phoenix's hologram was spinning slowly, her patterns shifting through colors Jake had never seen before. Phoenix? You okay? Jake, I just participated in combat that violated 47 different tactical protocols. Every action we took was unorthodox. None of it should have worked according to any database I have. She paused. It was the most exhilarating experience of my existence. Is this how humans feel all the time? This sense of making it up as you go? Jake laughed, exhausted. Pretty much, yeah. Welcome to humanity, Phoenix. The Zenthari transport limped closer, its captain hailing them with obvious gratitude and confusion. Unknown vessel, you saved our lives. But I must know, what military academy taught you those tactics? Jake smiled. No academy. Just Earth. We'll make sure you get to safety, then we need to disappear. Something tells me word's going to spread about this. He was right. By the time they reached Delta Station, the story had already hit the frontier networks. A human in a rebuilt Vorash ship had fought 3 KRL raiders using tactics that shouldn't exist. And somehow, impossibly, he'd won. Commander Vexthal received the combat report in his private quarters aboard the Vorash flagship Eternal Honor. He read it once, then read it again, certain there must be an error in the translation. 3 KRL raiders, experienced pilots with proven records, had been defeated by a single cargo vessel. Not defeated in honorable combat, but confused, outmaneuvered, and driven away like novices. Then he saw the ship's identification code. His ship. The vessel his people had declared beyond repair. The cruiser they'd sold for scrap rather than sully Vorash engineering standards with improvised repairs. And now a human had not only made it fly but had used it to humiliate raiders who'd been terrorizing the frontier for years. Vexthal's mandibles clicked together so hard they made a sharp snapping sound. His aide stepped back nervously. The commander stood, his ceremonial armor gleaming in the low light. Assemble a task force. 3 cruisers. Our fastest hunters. I want that vessel found and destroyed. Sir, it's just one cargo ship with a human crew. Perhaps a single. That ship bears Vorash construction codes. Vexthal's voice echoed through the chamber. It represents our engineering, our standards, our honor. This human has desecrated it with primitive modifications and then dared to prove those modifications work. Every species in the frontier will see this as proof that Vorash methods are inferior. We cannot allow this insult to stand. The aide bowed. What if the human surrenders? Vexthal considered this. If he surrenders immediately and admits his methods are wrong, we will grant him honorable captivity. The ship, however, must be destroyed. No evidence of this abomination can remain. 3 days later, Jake learned he was being hunted when Phoenix picked up military-grade sensor sweeps in their sector. They were docked at a small refueling station, trying to look inconspicuous, when the station master rushed into their bay. You need to leave. Now. Right now. The Zenthari's 4 arms were gesturing frantically. There's a Vorash battle group asking every station in 3 systems if they've seen your ship. They're offering a reward. They're making threats. Please, I have a family, I can't harbor fugitives. Cole was loading supplies faster than Jake had ever seen him move. Fugitives? We're fugitives now? We save people. We're heroes. We're also an insult to Vorash pride, Jake said, running pre-flight checks. Phoenix, how far out are they? Unknown. Vorash military vessels can mask their sensor signatures. They could be 10 minutes away or 10 hours. I recommend we leave immediately. Phoenix's hologram appeared, looking worried. If a collection of geometric patterns could look worried. Jake, I've analyzed the ships hunting us. They're newer models, faster than we are, with more weapons. By every tactical calculation, we cannot win a direct engagement. Good thing I don't do direct engagements then. Jake fired up the engines, feeling the improvised systems hum to life. Cole, secure that cargo. We're leaving in 2 minutes. They barely cleared the station before Phoenix detected the incoming signatures. 3 Vorash cruisers, dropping out of hyperspace in a coordinated pattern that blocked the standard escape routes. Jake had to admit they were good. Professional, precise, and very, very angry. The communication came through on all frequencies, impossible to ignore. Human vessel Phoenix rising. This is Commander Vexthal of the Vorash Imperial Fleet. You are in possession of stolen property and have committed crimes against proper engineering standards. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Comply immediately and you will be granted honorable treatment. Jake looked at the tactical display. 3 warships versus 1 rebuilt cargo hauler. Every escape route covered. Weapons locked on. It was, by any reasonable standard, hopeless. Phoenix, scan for anything nearby. Asteroid fields, debris, gravitational anomalies. Anything we can use. Jake, there's a dense asteroid field approximately 40,000 kilometers to port. However, it's rated as extremely hazardous. Ship navigation protocols recommend avoiding it entirely due to collision risks. Jake grinned. Perfect. Take us there full speed. Cole grabbed his seat. The hazardous field? The one that protocols say to avoid. Exactly. The Vorash follow protocols. We don't. The Phoenix rising accelerated toward the asteroid field while the Vorash cruisers gave chase. Vexthal's voice came through again, now tinged with anger. Human, you cannot escape. Our ships are faster. Our weapons have greater range. Surrender now or face destruction. Jake didn't waste breath responding. He was too busy calculating entry angles into the asteroid field, looking for gaps that shouldn't exist, planning routes that would make any safety inspector have a breakdown. They hit the field at a speed that made the collision alarms scream. Asteroids the size of buildings whipped past, some missing them by meters. Phoenix was processing navigation data faster than any organic pilot could, but even she sounded stressed. Jake, at this speed, the probability of collision increases by 7% every minute we remain in the field. And what's the probability the Vorash will follow us in? There was a pause as Phoenix checked their pursuers. They've stopped at the field's edge. Their navigation protocols won't allow entry at unsafe velocities. Then we stay here as long as we need to. But Vexthal wasn't giving up. The Vorash cruisers positioned themselves at 3 different exit points from the field, settling in to wait. Jake could see their formation on his sensors. Textbook perfect, covering all the mathematically optimal escape routes. They're going to wait us out, Cole said. We can't stay in here forever. Eventually we have to leave and they'll be ready. Jake studied the tactical display for a long time. The Vorash positions were perfect. Absolutely perfect. Which meant they were predictable. Phoenix, is there a star nearby? Something with a strong gravity well? Yes, there's a Class G star approximately 2 million kilometers from our current position. However, approaching it would require leaving the asteroid field, and the Vorash would intercept us immediately. What if we didn't leave the way they expect? Phoenix's patterns flickered with confusion. Jake, there are only 3 viable exits from this field. All of them are covered. Viable according to protocols. What if we make our own exit? What if we go through the densest part of the field, the part that's supposedly impossible to navigate, and come out where they're not watching? There was a long silence. Cole was staring at Jake like he'd suggested flying into the sun. Phoenix's hologram was cycling through calculations so fast her form was blurring. Finally, Phoenix spoke. The dense section has an asteroid every 12 meters on average. No ship has ever successfully navigated it. The collision probability is 99.6%. And the other 0.4%? That's the margin of error in my calculations. It doesn't mean it's possible. It means I can't calculate how impossible it is. Jake's hands moved across the controls. So you're saying there's a chance? Phoenix, 3 weeks ago you told me it was impossible for you to function with hybrid systems. How'd that work out? Phoenix was quiet for a moment. Point taken. Jake, if we attempt this, I'll need to control navigation directly. Your human reflexes, while admirable, won't be fast enough. You'll need to trust me completely. I already do. Cole? Cole had his eyes closed. I'm going to die in an asteroid field because my partner is insane. Just do it. At least it'll be quick. Phoenix took full control of the ship, and what happened next was something Jake would never forget. The Phoenix rising threaded through gaps that shouldn't have existed, rolled through spaces barely wider than her hull, accelerated and decelerated in patterns that made the inertial dampeners scream in protest. Phoenix was pulling maneuvers that no AI should attempt because they violated every safety protocol ever written. She was learning. Learning to think like Jake thought, not in terms of what should work but what might work if you were crazy enough to try. They emerged from the field on the far side, nowhere near any of the exits the Vorash were watching. By the time Vexthal realized what happened, Jake had already plotted a course to the nearby star. Human. That trajectory will take you too close to the star's corona. Your hull will not withstand the radiation. Jake ignored him, taking the Phoenix rising on a screaming approach toward the star that made every sensor shriek warnings. The heat was incredible, even with shields at maximum. Cole was sweating. Phoenix was routing power from everything non-essential just to keep the cooling systems running. Jake, hull temperature is approaching critical levels. If we don't pull away in 30 seconds. Wait for it. 20 seconds. The hull plating was starting to glow. 15 seconds. Systems were shutting down from heat overload. 10 seconds. Cole was praying in 3 different languages. 5 seconds. Now, Phoenix. Full power to engines. Use the star's gravity. The Phoenix rising whipped around the star in a gravity slingshot that accelerated them to speeds the Vorash couldn't match without risking their own ships. The maneuver violated every safety margin in existence, pushed the ship past recommended tolerances, and absolutely should not have worked. It worked perfectly. They shot out of the system while the Vorash cruisers scrambled to follow, but they were too far behind, too committed to their perfect formations to adapt quickly enough. Vexthal's final transmission was filled with frustrated rage. This is not over, human. You fight without honor. Without proper tactics. Without. Jake cut the transmission. Phoenix's hologram appeared, her patterns shifting with what looked like pride. Jake, I just violated 38 different navigation protocols, ignored 12 safety standards, and performed maneuvers that my original programming would have refused to attempt. And it was amazing. I think I'm beginning to understand why humans are so difficult for the rest of the galaxy to deal with. You don't accept limitations. You just find ways around them. Jake slumped in his chair, exhausted. That's what we do best. Now let's find somewhere quiet to hide while every Vorash commander in the sector wants us dead. Cole looked at him. You know this is just going to get worse, right? We humiliated them. They won't stop. Jake smiled. Good. Let them come. We'll keep showing them what impossible looks like. The story spread like wildfire across the frontier networks. A human in a salvaged wreck had outfought Carolo pirates and outrun Vorash military cruisers using tactics that violated every rule in the book. In bars and trading posts across a dozen systems, people were talking about nothing else. Some called it luck. Others called it insanity. But everyone was talking about it. Jake's hidden asteroid dock wasn't hidden anymore. The first visitor arrived 3 days after they'd escaped Vexthal. A young Zenthari engineer named Kelix. ironically the nephew of the auctioneer who'd sold Jake the ship. He stood at the dock entrance holding a toolkit and looking nervous. "I saw the combat footage," Kellic said, his forearms fidgeting. "The sensor logs from the medical transport. What you did shouldn't be possible. I need to know how you did it." Jake was under the Phoenix Rising, replacing heat-damaged hull plating from their star slingshot maneuver. "I just didn't follow the rules. That's all." "That's not all." Kellic stepped closer, his voice intense. "I've been designing engine modifications for 3 years. Improvements that could make standard drives 15% more efficient. The Engineering Council rejected them. Said they violated established principles. Said mixing certain technologies was improper. But you mixed everything and it works. Teach me how." Jake slid out from under the ship, wiping grease from his hands. He saw something in the young alien's eyes that he recognized, the frustration of being told no, of having ideas dismissed because they didn't fit the standard approach. "You really want to learn?" "More than anything." "Okay. First lesson, stop asking for permission to innovate." Within 2 weeks there were 12 engineers at the dock. A KRLL defector who'd been kicked out of his clan for suggesting tactical improvements. 2 human mechanics from Earth who'd heard the stories. A Vorash scientist whose research had been deemed too unorthodox. They came from different species, different backgrounds, all united by one thing: they were tired of being told their ideas were wrong because they didn't match the established way of doing things. Jake's operation transformed into something bigger than a repair shop. It became a workshop, a classroom, a rebellion. He showed them how to think beyond their species' limitations, how to combine technologies that had never been meant to work together, how to embrace failure as just another step toward success. Phoenix helped teach too, which surprised Jake. She'd become something unprecedented. An AI who could think outside her original programming, who could adapt and improvise. Other AIs from across the frontier started contacting her, curious about how she'd changed. She told them about embracing uncertainty, about the freedom that came from not always knowing the right answer. The Galactic Engineering Council noticed. Of course they noticed. Within a month, Jake received an official transmission. A holographic representative appeared in his workshop, looking stern and disapproving. "Jake Morrison, you are hereby ordered to cease all unauthorized engineering instruction. Your methods violate 42 established safety standards and undermine centuries of proven scientific principles. You are promoting dangerous practices that could lead to catastrophic failures." Jake looked around his workshop at the dozen engineers working on their projects. Azenthri was successfully integrating human battery technology into a KRYLL power core. 2 Vorash were collaborating on a hybrid navigation system. Dangerous practices? We're innovating. That's what engineering is supposed to be. Innovation must occur within proper channels, with appropriate oversight and adherence to established protocols. The Council has decided to offer you a choice: accept a full pardon for your previous violations, agree to stop teaching these methods, and submit your ship for proper inspection and correction, or face being declared an outlaw across all civilized systems. Cole, who'd been listening, stepped forward. "That's insane. He saved lives. He's teaching people to think for themselves. He's teaching them to ignore safety standards and established wisdom. That cannot be tolerated." The holographic representative's face was stern. "You have 24 hours to decide." After the transmission ended, the workshop was silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Jake could accept the pardon, go back to being a small-time salvager, watch everything he'd built fall apart. Or he could refuse and become a fugitive, hunted not just by the Vorash but by every civilization that valued order over innovation. Kellic spoke first, his voice quiet but firm. "If you accept their terms, I'm staying here. I'll keep teaching what you've taught us. They can't stop all of us." The other engineers nodded in agreement. The KRLL defector crossed his arms. "The frontier's always been for people who don't fit in the core worlds. That's why we're here. If they want to kick you out of civilized space, well, we're already on the edge anyway." Jake looked at Phoenix's hologram. "What do you think?" Her patterns swirled thoughtfully. "I think that 6 weeks ago I believed there was only one correct way to do anything. Now I know that's the greatest limitation anyone can accept. If we stop teaching that, the galaxy stays locked in the same patterns forever. Nothing changes. Nothing improves." Jake spent that night thinking. He could play it safe, accept their terms, live a quiet life. But he kept coming back to the young engineers in his workshop, the ones whose ideas had been rejected, whose innovations had been dismissed. He thought about all the species who'd been told their approaches were inferior, their methods substandard. When the 24 hours were up, Jake sent his response. Not privately to the council, but broadcast across every frontier network, every trading post, every colony that could receive transmissions. Galactic Engineering Council, here's my answer. No. I'm not stopping. I'm not hiding. I'm establishing the free engineering collective right here in the frontier, open to any species, any idea, any method. If it works, we use it. If it fails, we learn from it. You can't stop innovation by making it illegal. You can't control progress by threatening the people who refuse to accept limitations. He paused, looking at the camera. To everyone watching this who's been told their ideas are wrong, their methods are improper, their innovations are unacceptable, come to the frontier. We'll give you a place to try, a place to fail, a place to succeed. Because the universe doesn't care about your protocols. It cares about what works. The transmission ended. Cole whistled low. Well, that's it. We're officially outlaws. Yeah, Jake agreed. Feels about right. The response was overwhelming. Within days, applications flooded in from engineers across the galaxy. Not just young rebels, but established scientists tired of bureaucracy, mechanics frustrated by rigid standards, even a few corporate researchers who'd had their projects cancelled for being too unconventional. The frontier systems offered protection, declaring that the Free Engineering Collective was operating under their jurisdiction, not the core worlds. The Vorash delegation arrived on the third week. Jake almost activated defensive systems when their shuttle approached, but Phoenix stopped him. Wait, look at their credentials. These aren't military. They're from the Vorash Science Academy. The delegation was led by an elderly Vorash named Corven, his ceremonial armor marked with academic honors. He walked through the workshop slowly, examining the hybrid systems, the mixed technologies, the collaborative projects. His mandibles clicked softly, a sound Jake had learned indicated deep thought. Finally, Corven stopped in front of the Phoenix Rising. I have been an engineer for 47 standard years. I have followed every protocol, cited every regulation, maintained every standard. I believe this was wisdom. He touched the ship's hull gently. But you have shown me it was fear. Fear of failure. Fear of imperfection. Fear of trying paths that might not work. Jake approached carefully. Your engineering is brilliant. It's just limited by your own rules. Yes, we built perfect systems that could not adapt. Beautiful designs that broke completely when one component failed. We prioritized elegance over resilience. Corvin turned to face Jake. My species designed this vessel to be perfect. You made it survivable. Which is more valuable? Both have their place, Jake said honestly. Your precision is incredible. But sometimes you need rough and ready instead of polished and perfect. Corvin nodded slowly. Would you accept Vorash students? Young engineers who wish to learn these unconventional approaches. The workshop erupted in excited chatter. Phoenix's hologram pulsed with bright colors. Even Cole looked surprised. Over the following months, the Free Engineering Collective grew into something none of them had expected. Ships started appearing that were like nothing the galaxy had seen before. Vessels that combined 3, 4, 5 different technologies into working systems. They weren't pretty by traditional standards, but they were effective. More importantly, they were adaptable. The core worlds watched with growing alarm as frontier ships began outperforming established designs. Trade corporations noticed that the hybrid vessels had better fuel efficiency. Military analysts studied combat footage showing tactics that weren't in any database. The rigid hierarchy of galactic civilization was facing something it couldn't control. Proof that there were better ways to do things. Some corporations offered Jake enormous amounts of credits to bring his methods to the core worlds under their control. He refused every offer. This wasn't about money. It was about changing how the galaxy thought about innovation. 6 months after his broadcast, Jake stood on the observation deck of his expanded facility, watching dozens of ships being built or modified. Each one was unique. Each one represented someone's idea that had been rejected somewhere else. Phoenix's hologram appeared beside him. Jake, I've been monitoring communications across the galaxy. 4 major engineering firms have announced they're adopting what they call adaptive design principles. 3 military academies are teaching a new course called unconventional tactical theory. The Engineering Council is losing its authority to mandate standards. Good, Jake said simply. Let them adapt or become irrelevant. Cole joined them holding a datapad. Boss, we've got 93 ships registered with the collective now. Applications from 16 different species to join our training program. And he paused, grinning. Commander Vexthal has been reassigned to administrative duties. Apparently, the Vorash military wasn't happy that he failed to catch one human in a rebuilt cargo ship. Jake smiled at that. The proud commander, defeated not by superior force but by refusal to adapt. So what's next? Cole asked. We've started a revolution. Changed how people think about engineering. Proved that human methods can compete with species that have been in space for thousands of years. What do we do now? Jake pulled up a star chart showing unexplored regions, abandoned technologies and colonies that had been written off as failures. Now we find every other useless thing the galaxy has thrown away and show them what it can become. Every rejected design, every dismissed innovation, every idea someone said was impossible. Phoenix's patterns swirled with anticipation. An expedition of impossible things. I like it. The Phoenix rising and a fleet of hybrid vessels prepared to depart, each crew member united by the same belief, that the best way to predict the future was to build it yourself, rules be damned. As they jumped to hyperspace, leaving the established civilizations behind, Jake thought about that auction hall where this all started. Where he'd bought a ship for scrap prices because everyone else saw only what was wrong with it. He'd proven something important. That sometimes the most valuable things in the universe are the ones everyone else has given up on. You just need someone stubborn enough to see their potential. Someone willing to break every rule to prove what's possible. Someone human.